In this video, I'm gonna share with you the biggest mistake I've made during jury selection. Ooh, this one hurts deep in the soul, mainly because it was such a small oversight with major repercussions. But before I dive into that, we gotta roll the intro. Welcome, my name is Jarrett Stone. I'm the owner of Stone Firm PLC, and I'm the founder of Law Venture. Now, for those that are new, be sure to check out the description below where you'll see some links to some freebies that'll help you on your path to becoming a better lawyer. Okay, so what is this big mistake? Before actually revealing this big mistake, I need to lay a little bit of a foundation and set the scene a bit. So with jury selection, the lawyer is going to want to basically achieve two main goals. The first goal is to explain and simplify the law, and that way the panel or the potential jury members understand what they're getting into. They essentially understand their jobs and duties if they are selected and put in the jury box and they're having to consider all the facts and apply the law that's at hand and at issue in that particular case. The second goal is a little bit different and actually much more important. And with the second goal, the lawyer is essentially trying to have a hot panel. In other words, the lawyer is trying to get the entire potential jury engaged to where they're answering questions that are being asked. Because the more discussion that's going on, the more organic conversation can happen, the smoother it seems, and also it doesn't seem like the lawyer is having to interrogate people in order to figure out where they fall on the spectrum. Now that actually gets me to maybe the most important aspect when it comes to this particular goal, which is asking questions. By asking the right questions, you can really start achieving three things during jury selection. First, you can start getting very valuable information, because if you're asking the right questions, then the individual's answers can really determine whether or not this individual maybe leans in favor of your client or maybe leans in favor of the other side. If the person leans in favor of the other side, you can start determining, okay, should I use a peremptory strike or should this person be struck for cause? And the second benefit is by asking questions directly to individuals. Not only is that person you're having that conversation with in that moment going to be alert, but other people are going to be alert as well. It's a lot like law school and the Socratic method, to where even though you're not being called upon and you're not answering that particular question the professor asked, you're still a little bit on edge, because at any point in time you feel like the professor may essentially focus in on you and then start asking you questions. So you're trying to really focus and see, okay, where is this set of questions going? Okay, if I get asked that question, how am I going to answer it? And by having people alert and paying attention, they're going to be able to retain a lot more information, and you're going to be able to make a stronger impression, which is very important. And maybe most importantly is this third benefit. By asking questions directly, you're going to have a really good opportunity to start developing a connection with certain individuals. In doing so, by having this connection, that person may kind of have been on the fence about which side to lean. If you can develop a bond during jury selection, that may be the ultimate tiebreaker to where you tip the scales slightly in your client's favor, which is fantastic. For example, if you end up having a bond or connection with somebody who seems introverted and shy, and you can really, get their confidence up during jury selection by making them feel more comfortable, that can go a long way to where they'll remember that feeling and they'll associate you with that feeling when it's time for, during closing argument, for you to ask them to rule in your client's favor. And at that point, that little extra connection right there can be the tipping point to ultimately win the case for your client. So don't really underestimate the power of being able to build a connection and to be personable and to be charming during jury selection. Okay, so with all of that, with that scene set and basically the goal that I was trying to achieve during this particular story, let's go ahead and move on to my particular story. And honestly, it's more of a tragic story than I think a good story. But just a real quick pause, if you are interested in upping your game when it comes to jury selection, by figuring out, okay, what questions should I be asking? How should I be handling certain situations? What should I actually be doing during jury selection to build that connection, to keep people alert and to keep people engaged and to make your life a whole lot easier during jury selection? Then be sure to go in the description below, click on the link for Trial Ad Academy, check that out. That's gonna be something that you may be interested in. Okay, so story time. It's the first day of this jury trial, and during jury selection, I'm using all the tips and tricks that I know in order to put fans in the stands, so to speak, in order to put a lot of people who are gonna rule in my client's favor in that jury box. And so what I'm having to do is a little bit of on-the-fly math and get a feel of what I think is gonna end up happening, because I'm figuring out, of these 6 people, this person's gonna be struck for cause. Yeah, this person's leaning in favor of the other side, so I'm gonna have to use a peremptory here. And, oh, this person's actually pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and move on. That way I don't spotlight this favorable person. Okay, this person's pretty good. Okay, I'm developing a connection with this person. This person needs to be struck for cause, yada, yada, yada. But keeping in mind that I only had a limited amount of time. And whenever you only have a limited amount of time to conduct your jury selection, you're gonna have to be very calculated on how you handle it. Because if you have a limited amount of time, you have to essentially make a discretionary decision, which is, okay, do I really want to go real in depth with these questions with the people who I think are going to potentially be on the jury? In other words, the people who are maybe the first 12 or 18 people, because they're more likely to be put on the jury because you move on to the next one after someone's struck. Or should I spend more time talking to everyone, even the people in the very back who most likely aren't going to even be considered to be on the jury, because most likely we're not going to get so many people struck for cause. And so in that moment, I got a feel of like, okay, given the amount of people who I think are going to be struck for cause and who I think are going to be struck with a peremptory on both sides, I don't think we're going to need to go very far into this. So I started spending more time talking maybe to the first half of the panel. That way I can ask more questions that went a whole lot deeper. They weren't just surface level questions, and I can really get to the root of particular answers and really figure out, okay, this person truly leans in favor of my client, or this person truly leans in favor of the other side. This is extremely valuable. So by the time I think 15 or 20 minutes was up for jury selection, I was extremely happy with the information I was able to get during jury selection. But little did I know, I completely forgot something that, in all honesty, I don't think I would have thought of until it actually happened and hurt me in this situation. So I sit down and I let the other lawyer go, and I honestly, during her jury selection, didn't feel like she got a lot of valuable information for her client, and truthfully for me, I didn't really benefit from it as well. It's mainly because she didn't really engage too much with the particular potential jury because she was really stuck behind the podium. I could tell she wasn't very comfortable leaving the podium, and so in doing so, that creates a bit of a barrier during your jury selection. People kind of naturally relate it to maybe a teacher talking down to them, because you have to keep in mind, you're standing at a podium and the potential jurors are seated, and so there's basically a height point of view that's pretty dramatic, especially with the people in the front row. And whenever you consider that the people in the front row are more likely to be on the jury, there really isn't a strong connection that's being built there. So all that being said, I felt super good after the other lawyer sat down and it was time to start striking people for cause and then using the peremptory strikes. And then the plot twist happened. My eye is really twitching today, and I have no idea why. I don't know if you can tell on the video if it's zoomed in close enough for you to be able to tell, but it's a little distracting. And keep in mind, I'm not winking at you, but if you are to hit that like button, I'll go ahead and throw you a wink right there. Okay, anyways, let's get back to it. So as soon as the other lawyer sat down and before anybody was struck for cause or with the peremptory, the judge said something that just brought fear straight to my heart, which was, okay, does anybody here have a conflict to where they need to be excused and not be considered to be on the jury? And what I saw was horrible. Everyone who stood up and formed a line to explain to the judge why they had a conflict and why they couldn't make time to be a juror ended up being the ones that I was counting on being in the jury. In fact, it seemed like everyone who was favorable for my client in that situation, who was up front and who was most likely going to actually make it on the jury, was standing up and was having a conflict. Maybe their spouse was sick and they had to go take care of their spouse, or there was a work thing. I don't know. But what I ended up seeing was just favorable person after favorable person leaving, which just made me feel like I wasted so many questions and so much time on people that were never going to be considered in the first place. So what I ended up seeing once it was time to start striking people for cause and with a peremptory was a whole bunch of people in the back being considered. And I didn't spend a lot of time asking people in the back basically any questions at all. And that was a huge issue. But for those watching right now, you may be thinking, okay, so what he should have done differently was ask more questions to those in the back. In reality, I probably would have done the same exact presentation. My big learning experience here was what I should have done, especially because I think he was a visiting judge and he just forgot, was before I did my entire jury selection, I should have approached the bench with the other lawyer and said, Your Honor, at this point in time, I don't know if this is when you want to ask if there are any time conflicts. That way, we're not having to ask questions to potential jury members that'll never be considered. That way, everyone can, save time by focusing these questions on people who should be potentially considered to be put in the jury box. That is a fair request. And I didn't make that request. I didn't even think to make that request because it just didn't cross my mind in the moment. You get so hyped up for these jury trials. You're also nervous, your heart's going because you're about to try and make an impression on all these strangers, and you don't think, okay, what does the judge need to do at this point? Instead, you're focused on what do I need to do? So the learning experience really is make sure you explain to the judge that the people who have a time conflict need to be removed before you start conducting voir dire or jury selection. Because the last thing you want to do is really waste time by asking questions to people who will never be considered in the first place. And again, what ended up happening to me was a whole bunch of people I didn't know which way they were leaning was put in the jury box, and that put my client at a potential disadvantage. The problem was I didn't know, and that made the trial a little bit weaker because I didn't have the same connection as I had with the people in the beginning because I didn't focus that time with those people who were actually put in the jury box. So overall, the lesson here is to one, make sure this doesn't happen by asking the judge to essentially cut people before jury selection starts. And two, the most important lesson is to figure out where you've essentially made mistakes during your jury selection or entire jury trial and learn from them. I can guarantee you, no matter how many jury trials I have ahead of me, I will always make sure that I try and explain to the judge that these people need to be cut before a jury selection or voir dire actually occurs because I do not want to make this mistake again. All right, any questions about this? Be sure to let me know in the comments. If you're still watching at this point, I appreciate it, so be sure to hit that like button. And if you want to see more videos like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button as well, and I'll see y'all in the next video.